we are in an unusual village. And not merely because there is a zombie village across the water over here, but because this is a village on the edge. On the edge of old terrain generation and new terrain generation. As you can see there behind me. That said, it's fairly ordinary. The structures span across the border, but they are fairly normal. The biomes on either side of the border are actually the same in this case, so that may have something to do with it. But many times they're not. And that's where you have some unusual things happening. And we're going to take a look at a few of those. I circumnavigated my Cowcornia world, looking for things that don't quite belong. Things that didn't quite match the terrain on the other side. Because we get some weird things happening at the border. Let's take a look at some of them. Here we have some snowy biomes, bordering here on plains and beach in the new terrain generation area. And then right over here, an igloo on the beach. One of the things that we're going to see as a theme in these odd structures is that they are sort of out over on the other side. They're generated in areas that they normally would not be, but apparently associated with the biome on the other side of the chunk generation border. Evidently, there's something going on in terrain generation where some of these structures are perhaps generated before the chunks are fully generated. And then when the new version comes in and generates, finishes generating the chunks, well, they get the new biomes, but the structures that were already established. So here's a rare shot of a turtle next to an igloo. Again, we have this lovely snowy biomes here. But then across the border, over into forest and a birch forest, we have a snowy village. Well away from the snowy biomes, or well enough away that you wouldn't normally have one generating this far away, but here it is with the snowy villagers as well. I'm wondering what would happen if we stuck around long enough to watch some baby villagers get born. Would they inherit the appearance for the local biome over here, or would they still have the snowy village or appearance? It's interesting. Also, you can see the ground underneath it is kind of plunked down in the middle of this river here. And over this ravine. Poor cat. Yeah, this village was definitely meant for a different location. And you can see how the paths are cutting into this hill here. It's like the paths and everything here had some different different terrain in mind, different contours of the land. And we'll see this in some of the other instances. Here we have a warm ocean bordered by snowy plains, and on those plains we have a capsized shipwreck. Now I know these can form on beaches, but I don't think I've ever seen them on a plain, much less a snowy plain. So I guess that doesn't really matter. But this is definitely on a snowy plain and not a beach, I checked. Here we have an ocean monument that appears to have just cut its little rectangular area into the surrounding, into the terrain on the other side of the border here. But there's a little bit more to it than that. As you can see, it maybe didn't quite cut in so much where the terrain gets over the water level. And in fact, in our next unusual structure, you'll see a bit more about what it may actually be doing. Another ocean monument, but this time the terrain that it has cut into is a bit higher. And you can see that there is a limit to how high it will cut. And it looks like there's a bit of a shelf there, but the stripstone is also growing down into it, which is interesting. And you can also see here the extent to which it does cut into the surrounding territory to make room for its own structure. Let's see what else we can find. A Pillager Outpost. Not all that unusual. You may notice that there's no pillagers around. That's due to a bug that's been around since Snapshot 21W39A. There is a bug report for it. I was looking at that earlier. No, the unusual thing here is that this thing is just cut right into this hill, which makes me think that maybe it wasn't entirely meant to be in this terrain. In fact, it seems to be cutting down into the ground a bit. If we go down over here to the door, I came here earlier. I had to mine through these leaves here to get in. And if you go up the steps, you find, well, you can't, because the steps are blocked by the stone from the hill. So I think that that is an unusual structure, and I'm thinking that it may have been intended for the old lands. Here in this jagged section of border, we have this shipwreck. Now, it's not unusual for a shipwreck to be found on a beach, but this is a bit further up than the beach, and it's also very much intact and just resting right on its keel, much more like what you might find for a shipwreck that's resting on the bottom of the ocean, which I think this one may have intended to have been. But if you don't think that's unusual enough, let's look further. Out in this lovely ocean, we have this shipwreck over here. Still floating, but obviously wrecked. Not at all unusual, really. What is unusual is this other one over here in the middle of the plains biome. Also, with an ocean ruin right alongside it. It did spawn a drowned or two initially when I first was scouting these out, but they quickly burned up in the sun. It's not spawning anymore. Still part of that same bug that apparently is affecting the Pillager Outposts. The structures that normally would continue to spawn mobs are not doing so. Now that is unusual, but further up here, right over on this hill up ahead, and we will speed on over. We have this shipwreck down here, capsized on its side. Looks like it would be floating, but instead it is embedded into this cliffside here, and chunked into this little bit of cave, which are apparently from the new terrain generation, whereas the shipwreck is probably more associated with this old terrain. And also, up this way, we have some more ocean ruins. We have like 3 or 4 of them up here. There's another one down below there. And we have some caves there, but they I don't think those are actually associated with the ruins. It's just embedded into the side of this mountain here. In fact, if we go inside, we can even open up the chest. Buried treasure map. I'm curious to take a look at that and see if it goes someplace in the old terrain generation or new. If it's in the new, will the treasure be there? Or will it just be a wild goose chase? And what kind of terrain will it show on the map? Maybe we'll take a look at that next time. But right now, let's move on. Now here we have, next to some more snowy biomes, another pillager outpost. Again, not spawning any pillagers, but that's to be expected with the known bug we have. What's unusual here is that it and the one other structure it has associated with it here are on their own little blobs of land floating above the water. Or in this case, slightly connected to it. Obviously, this was generated possibly with a different expectation of the surrounding contours. Here we have some old terrain generation with some taiga forest and a beach, an ocean. And then the new generation, we have some savanna and plains and an ocean ruin. Presumably it should be on the bottom of the ocean here, but now it's over here on the plains. Let's see what else we get. Here at this somewhat jagged section of border, we have this nice little plains biome and a beach, and presumably an ocean here, because over here in the savanna, we have another ocean ruin. Kind of an unusual place for an ocean ruin, up on the savanna, next to a river, but there you are. And what else do we have? Here we have some old terrain generation with some snowy biomes. Over on this side we have savanna. So what would you expect? Of course, an igloo. Just off the beach. You're trying to get to it, aren't you, Cal? Trying to cool down. I don't blame you. Now over here we have another set of snowy biomes and a nice little village set here on the edge of the forest. Very nice. This one over here did not fare so well. It's right on the border. You can see some of its paths going into the woods up here with not a single structure. The structures all appear to have generated down here in the rock, but just a couple of them. With their entrances back over here. Here's some skeletons, but they are apparently inside some caves in the cliff face here. And with the lanterns here, it looks like there's enough light to probably stave off most mob spawning. I hope. And maybe the lava will keep some of it away as well. Moving on. And here we have a vast ocean. There's only a few little bits of land to be seen. And a little bit of adventure to be had as well. So, in the midst of all this, why is this shipwreck in the middle of the taiga? I wonder why. So what could possibly top a shipwreck in the middle of the taiga? Snow. Now we've seen some of the ocean ruins, but not the warm ocean ruins yet. And apparently they don't want to be left out. Because here is one right here in the middle of the plains. Nice place for it. Oh, and there's a drowned. Is he going to make it to the water? Hey, he made it. Good for him. Let's move on. Now in this section we have some cold ocean here with some icebergs and such. And over here on the plains, another shipwreck. It's starting to become a bit of a cliche at this point, to be honest. Well, let's see what else we've got. Here we have another snowy village, this time bordering on a jungle. Oh, with some zombies coming out there. Where might they be coming from? Well, there's a cave over here that the village is kind of growing into. I'll help them out a little bit. And it looks like they've got some mobs spawning in the dark over here and coming out. Even though they have things lit up over here. Ocelots and snow. Not something you see all that often. And a little bit dark over here, I think. Let's help them out. Anyway, that is not the most dangerous village that I've seen in these travels along the border here. There's another example that's even more extreme than this. So let's go check it out. So for this last visit, we have this nice little plains village. Not here, not right on the border, but over here just a little ways over the border. And this is perhaps the most dangerous village I have seen, at least in these snapshots, possibly ever. And as you can see by the way it's laid out, how it has sort of some of its own little blobs of land, either hovering over the water or down, or well, hovering above it. Plus these little grass blocks floating in the water and the odd villager floating in the water as well. You can see that it was not meant for here. And you can see some of the paths going off, well, up the cliff face here. What the heck is that even? Wood blocks all over the thing there. I'm guessing that maybe was meant to be a dock, perhaps. But instead of it's up on the cliffside, these paths going into the caves here. But this, you saw the paths up above, but the buildings are down below, down in these caves. Careful, guys, because there's some dangerous stuff down in here. Might fall on a stalagmite. You might get eaten by a grue, or, you know, by one of the actual mobs. Or, yeah, one of those guys. Might get blowed up. Or you might wander over here to the edge of the village and fall down into this part of the cave. Or maybe get swept down by the waterfall and then get swept down to this part of the cave. Way down to the deep slate down there, or whatever they call it these days. So yes, that is why I consider this to be perhaps the most dangerous village, or village placement I've ever seen. I don't think their crops are even going to grow here. They just don't have enough light. Especially when it's nighttime. But anyway, that is the end of our presentation. The most dangerous village in the world. And it's mostly because it is just plain out of place. It's in the wrong spot. It's down at the wrong level. It's on the wrong side of the border, basically. And that's the kind of thing that you see in these converted lands. And I hope that they fix that. Well, let's see what happens on the next snapshot. Bye.